gentlemen, thank you for joining us in this week's AFC press conference. Today we will have presentations from myself, Kathy Hughes, and also Dr. Vince Adams, and Member of Parliament, Mr. Ricky Roop. Sorry. I'm still flustered from the traffic and driving here. Okay, so with that, let us start with the first presentation, and that's going to be on the EID issue that's been in the public domain recently. The Alliance for Change notes with alarm government's recent announcement that it has entered into a $34 million contract with a German company for the production and rollout of an electronic citizenship card, which will consolidate the data of the holder into a digital format. There can be no doubt that the AFC's commitment and that of the previous coalition government, which established a ministry whose primary focus was to examine these issues, namely internet governance, digital skills development, digital promotion, digital entrepreneurship, e-government, cybersecurity, post and telecommunications. We're quite aware of the power of technology if implemented in a cohesive manner and with the requisite legal protections to improve access to government services, the ease of doing business, and ultimately the development of a strong, robust economy and overall growth and development. What is of grave concern with regards to the EID announcement is the piecemeal approach to what should be a clearly defined, structured approach to a complex issue. That is, moving our paper-based systems in Guyana into the digital world of the 21st century. This must be based on a clearly articulated policy backed by an action plan or a roadmap that is there for implementation. Neither of these have been presented to the people of Guyana. The ramblings we've heard refer to work permits and immigration issues for the most part and fail to provide a cohesive e-government approach, which should include plans to implement the following. E-services, which seeks to improve the delivery of government services to citizens through an enabling ICT environment. E-participation, which reduces the digital divide in Guyana between the hinterland poor and remote communities across our 10 regions, and of course internationally, especially for our diaspora. E-administration, a secure computing environment for the government of Guyana in keeping with industry standards, a whole of government approach with interoperability among government agencies. The recommended approach should also start with broad consultation, where government lays out their holistic e-governance agenda and identifies the key and enabling building blocks for the proposed system. An EID should just be one of these building blocks, and other building blocks would include, for example, e-health, e-education, e-agriculture, e-text, e-police, to name a few. Integration with other digital systems, such as our passport issuing and border control, the birth and death registries, are also to be considered. It remains unclear the integration of this EID system with GCOM systems and the opposition's call for the use of biometrics for identification at the place of poll. A national program of this magnitude would need to start off with the digitization of our registries. You will recall the over 100 young ICT proficient Guyanese who were in the process of doing just that when they were fired on the advent of this administration in August 2020. This EID project ideally should form part of modernizing the General Register Office, which is the entity responsible for Guyana's civil registry. GRO's legislation may need to be updated for this level of digital modernization, in addition to a comprehensive suite of other legislations which will be required in addition to data protection and cybersecurity. Many countries have passed legislation regarding data storage and protection, including prohibiting the storage of citizens' data outside of the national territory. Where is government's public articulation of systems and assurances that will guarantee the right of all Guyanese? Our citizens must also have rights like those guaranteed under the EU General Data Protection Regulation at a minimum. They must be able to know which individual or government agency has accessed their personal data and which and for when and for what purpose. The penalties for illegal access to citizens' data should also be highlighted. Given this scope, major fundamental issues have not been addressed in the public domain to date and are totally missing from what should be an intelligent, informative discussion on a national issue. We in the AFC feel that this is not just coincidence, but a deliberate attempt by the PPP not to be transparent, as is their modus operandi. There has been no public information program to inform, educate, and engender trust in such a system targeted to the people of Guyana, which will require access to one's most private personal data. This project also did not come to the Parliament for the requisite discussion and scrutiny. These omissions are all too glaring to be accidental, and therefore we can only conclude that this is a disdain with which this government holds its citizens, which it is supposed to serve. Thank you. So that was the statement on our EID, and I'd like to go to Ricky, who has a presentation to make also. Ricky.
Thank you, Kathy, and good afternoon to all. My press statement will be on the International Day of Forests that will be celebrated on the 21st of March. And the Alliance for Change would like to wish all a happy Day of International Forest. Under the theme Forest and Health, which emphasizes the close link between healthy forests and human well-being on our planet. For Guyana, forests are not only a source of economics and ecological value, but also played a vital role in supporting public health and livelihood for many communities. Our forests are also homes to countless species of flora and fauna and played a critical role in mitigating climate change by absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Trees and other vegetation in the forest provide a range of ecosystem services, including clean air, water, food, and medicine, which are essential for human health and well-being. Forest also plays a critical role in supporting sustainable development and reducing poverty in many parts of the world, including Guyana. The forest sector in Guyana provides jobs and incomes for many communities. Resources such as timber, non-timber forest products are important to the income of men, women, and communities as a whole. As we continue to work towards restoring and protecting our forests, we must recognize in particular the critical role that our indigenous people have played throughout history. We must recognize the ongoing importance of communities and local forest managers who have stewards of these precious ecosystems and generations. At the same time, forests are also vulnerable to a range of threats, including deforestation, degradation, and climate change. The impact of climate change on forests cannot be ignored. Rising temperature, changing precipitation patterns, extreme weather events have already begun to take a toll on forests, leading to increased frequency and severity of forest fires, droughts, and insect outbreaks in many parts of the world. These disturbances not only affect the health and productivity of forests, but also have a cascading effect on the broader ecosystem and human societies that rely on them. By maintaining our forests, we can avoid and mitigate some of the worst impact of climate change through the reduction of carbon emission, preservation of biodiversity, and ensuring the resilience of our ecosystems. Though many of these benefits are under increased threat from rapid mining and insufficient coherence in our national approach, recently with the new extractive industry, we have seen mangrove forests being destroyed, and as traditional mining expands, there is still no proper reforestation plan in place. We are pushing the frontier of forest destruction, and we should be mindful of the consequences. These threats not only undermine the ecological health of our forests, but also risk the public health by compromising access to critical ecosystem services. By promoting sustainable forest management practices and investing in forest restoration efforts, we can ensure that our forests continue to provide essential ecosystem services for human health and well-being. The sustainable livelihood that our forests generate should be increased and nurtured through a policy framework and enable an environment based on meaningful and effective participation of indigenous and local communities. Financially, over the years, we have seen the benefit of the forest without clear cutting, and as a result of our sustainable forest management, I wish here now to acknowledge the work of the commitment of the Guyana Forest Commission staff and board. Guyana has recently obtained considerable amount of money through the Multi-Global Climate Fund. We have committed some over 700 odd million US dollars from carbon credits, and more recently, over 5 billion from the European Union. The task of rewarding standing forests is in global, but forests in themselves will not stop the climate crisis. We must all reduce our greenhouse gases. As a sitting member of parliament, I cannot overemphasize the absurdity of having the Natural Resources Sectoral Committee in parliament not functioning. As Guyanese says, you can't speak through both sides of your mouth. If indeed we are to fulfill our national and international commitments, we must engage elected officials. Natural resources are not purview only for government, but all. Guyanese have a role and must be enabled to do so. As we celebrate this year theme, Forest and Health, let us renew our commitment to safeguarding our forests and promoting sustainable forest management practices. By doing so, we can ensure that our forests continue to provide vital ecosystem services that support human health and well-being for generations to come. I intend to plant a tree under whose shade I do not expect to sit. Should be a popular refrain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Parliament Ricky. And now can we go to Dr. Vince Adams, who has a presentation also to make.
Thanks, Kathy, and welcome to the media once again. This seems to be a never-ending saga here, but it was at least I think we've really caught the attention of the government and the EPA within the last week after last week's press conference. It was kind of humorous just reading the headlines. One headline was EPA defends condition in Liza 1 permit. I don't know who they're defending it. It's the vice president. He's the one who was brought up that the Liza 1 permit was the worst thing ever written. Thinking or lying about it, that it was written by me, meaning the coalition, to get some political points. So now they're caught with their pants down. They're trying to get out of it by spinning, continue to spin lies and misrepresentation. The other headline that caught my attention was EPA has not. This is direct quote from the EPA. EPA has not and will not shy away from examining appropriate forms of financial assurance for our spill and other environmental liabilities. Well, of course, we all know that is laughable, because the next headline was EPA placed down calls for Exxon guarantee on our spill insurance. Those two are, they conflict each other. They're saying we will never back down from ensuring that we've got protection, and then in the next headline, they're playing it down. So they're also doing a very clever job. And by the way, I hadn't heard them admit, even though they're dancing around, admit that the vice president was being untruthful about who signed that permit. But being the case, they've done a very clever job in trying to shift the attention or distract from the key issues to now they're comparing Lisa 1 and Lisa 2 permit. That's not the issue. And then that they're even creating a bigger lie to say that those two permits were equal. And the other thing that concerns me, that their spin apparently is getting through, because I was a little bit disappointed. I remember last week, Kemraj, just asked the media to do their fact checking, etc. And when I see, in one of the articles here, it says that Kaitro News would say that it was confirmed that little change between Lisa 1 and Lisa 2 is that for real? The biggest change, I always said, the biggest change was full liability coverage. To me, it's the most important thing here, is the most important issue that we're dealing with in the petroleum in these petroleum projects. And to say that, let me go back again, Lisa 1 did not have any coverage, zilch. Lisa 2, that's where we put in the full liability coverage that has been copied into every single one of the permits. Even the vice president, playing his politics, initially said, when I was talking about this, a year or two ago, he said, I was dreaming this up. Then he gets on Glenn Lal's show, and he took out when Glenn Lal asked him about full liability, he pulled out his cell phone and said, yes, we've got it in all of the permits. Last week, he said that, yes, he's concerned. He himself, he said, yeah, I'll take that you're concerned. I am also concerned about this parent company guarantee, which is part of the full liability coverage, which I'm going to get to there in a minute. I got a call from a report from one of the media folks saying, the morning after he said that, he said, Vince, pressure bust pipe. And I said, Chief, you wait and see, we got to see it first before I believe it happened. And lo and behold, now the EPA is coming out. Guess what the EPA is saying? Let me quote, which is one of the justification for them saying that there was little difference between the two, which is a blatant, which is a falsehood. I wouldn't even say it's a lie, because I don't even think that they know the difference. So here's what they said about full liability coverage. Further, it is unheard of to this day to reasonably require unlimited cover insurance. Well, that shows immediately that they do not even understand what the permit says. The permit does not say stop at insurance. It's not about insurance again. It is about full liability coverage, which includes, like I said, insurance, and anything over and above the insurance is covered by the parent company. No insurance company is covering everything. And then if they're saying it's unheard of, why did Exxon sign the permit to say that that's a requirement? They signed on to that requirement to provide the parent company guarantee. Then they went on. Insurance are disinclined and have never provided this level of coverage. Clarification from insurance, etc. It shows that they do not have a clue. They do not even understand. The permit never said unlimited liability. Unlimited insurance. It says unlimited coverage. And whether you have a penny as insurance or not, it's about the parent company guarantee. And Exxon signed on to it. So you cannot say that because this here is peddling, it's parroting exactly what Exxon is saying. Now they're parroting. They even went on. I could not believe this. This is EPA. It says that ensure environmental damage will go unpunished or unremedied through this vicarious, liability principle to confuse people. And then they say the coverage has to be reasonable, which is exactly Exxon's words. But let me go on. So they made a list of things to convince the newspapers that there weren't any difference. It says requirement for phase reduction of oil content, specification of produced water levels lower than the current international standard. What the heck does that mean? Requirement for phase reduction. It's a number or it's not. The number is 42 and 29. But again, that's not the point. The coalition got rid of dumping water. And by the way, let me bring something else to your attention. Payara 3, sorry, not Payara 3, the third project, which is the Payara project, that permit was written by the coalition. I left there in August of 2020. They signed that permit that was already written in draft. They signed it a month after I left in September. And they emasculated the Payara 3. So when they talk about this water dumping, we said there shall be no dumping of water. Let me read what's in the Payara 3, which was there, and they removed it. They removed it in the Yellowtail. Let me tell you what was in the Payara. And by the way, the Payara, what's in that permit? It wasn't the only developed by the EPA. It was Alison Redford team. I keep repeating this all the time. Alison Redford, the Canadian that they themselves brought, Alison Redford, the Department of Energy under Dr. Bino, and the GGMC. And we unanimously directed Exxon to stop dumping water. So here's what Payara 3 said. The permit holder shall complete a study to investigate and determine the feasibility, benefits, implication, and cost of re-injecting 100% of produced water. And it says at the end, it says, within 180 days of the date of the EPA approval of the terms of the reference, they shall conduct an independent consultant contractors study to be approved by the agency. The study not to be done by Exxon, by an independent contractor. And then it says, upon the issuance of the permit holder shall update the base design for the project, meaning the ship, to include tie-in points and space for potential produced water injection equipment. It's here in Payara 3. If you go look at the Yellowtail, they took all of that out, and then they're keeping to this dumping of the water. So it's not about dumping of the water. So this whole thing about phasing is useless. So here's the other point that they made to convince folks: requirement for application of the Oslo Paris Convention, harmonize. I mean, all of that is frivolous stuff. You're required to follow all right up in front of the permit. It says you're required to follow all international standards, local, international, national standards, and all standards that are applicable, and you can put in your standards. So that's frivolous. But here's the other thing that I've got to bring to your attention here, folks, that the vice president takes credit for. Capping stock. The capping stock and this only came up after the Macondo with the big oil spill. It came up with a piece of equipment. It's very heavy, to 50 to 100 tons. And what they do, they bring it and they put it on top of the well, stop the oil or divert the oil from flowing. When Exxon came to us, and by the way, that was under Dr. Bino at the Department of Energy, because that was operations. So he was in charge of that. But nevertheless, we all were in the meetings and took part in the meetings. Exxon, now, the faster you can get that capping stop onto the well, the better. That was one of the problems with the Macondo. It took months before they can get it there. When Exxon came, they said they're going to get it there in 20 days. I remember that distinctly. We beat them down. We said, no, absolutely not. You've got to make it down to 3 days. Even told them that their launching point, they had it to the northern end of Trinidad. We said, no, you got to bring it to the southern end. That's going to lessen it by a day. So so they're talking about, well, it wasn't in Lisa 1 and 2, it was in the Payaro. So here's what we put into the capping stock requirement. It says within 30 days of the date of the permit holder, Exxon, shall submit to the EPA for approval terms of reference for a study detailing the implementation of a system that allows for deployment of a capping stock within 3 days. 3 days. That's what we were bringing them to. You know what they did in the Yellowtail? They put in the Yellowtail 9 days. So they're saying you are allowed 6 extra days now to get that capping stock when they had already agreed that it's feasible for them to get down to 3 days. So don't come to us with all this, and then now you're taking credit that somehow capping stock wasn't there. It was the coalition that came up with capping stock for safety, and we drove Exxon down from 20 days to 3 days. And then now you remove that, put in the Yellowtail and the rest of the permit, which is going to become 9 days. Then here's the other one. It says the requirement for environmentally. Here is, well, a lot of these are laughable. Requirement for annual independent external audit on all embedded control. That's already in there. But here's one that is laughable. Requirement for a grievance mechanism in keeping with the World Bank's approach, grievance redress to ensure that the environment. Folks, we had a 24/7 hotline where you had to respond within 24 hours of getting a response, and you had to get to the site. And then, do people really believe this? Does the media believe it? How many phone calls have been returned from the media or anybody who calls into the EPA these days? So all of this stuff here is and then the last one, the requirement for permit holder to indemnify the government of Guyana for liability and financial assurance be guided by an estimate of the sum of the reasonable credible cost. This here is Exxon's language, and that's the sad part about it. It's sad that the EPA does not have the staff to even understand what's in these permits, and it's obvious that the EPA, that the staff, that all of this stuff is being written by Exxon. Now, I want to, just get back to a little bit, to the flaring part, which is another major issue that they're somehow claiming that, this fine that they're charging. That was the other thing. They talk, well, it's prohibited. Yes, they're saying now that, well, it's already prohibited. Yes, it's prohibited. But they added a clause. When we say prohibited, we mean prohibited, because we shut Exxon down in Lisa 1 to get to a safe level to stop the flaring. Okay? We went by the permit. You know what they did? They added a clause after we left. They added a clause to allow Exxon to flare unlimited quantities, which is what they've been doing. Why they're bragging about this fee that they've been receiving. Exxon wants to save money. They do not want to put in equipment to get to the prohibited flaring and to the prohibited water dumping. So don't come to us with this nonsense that you're improving the environment when you're not. The permit showed the Payaro. So I would like, and I would ask the media themselves to go check the difference between the Payaro, because the Payaro was the major improvements where it was done not only by the EPA, as I said, it was done by that team of experts, including Alison Redford. That is why I keep asking, where is the Alison Redford report? But PIARO was the coalition permit in addition to LISA 2 permit, and those 2 permit were the ones that improved the environment. And they went after I left and took back all of those things. They took back the flaring. They added a clause there to allow unlimited flaring as long as you can pay for it, which flies in the face of any environmental principle. Well, you don't need an EPA if that's the case, because all you've got to do is say, okay, Minister of Finance, I'm going to be flaring or emitting this amount of stuff. Give me your unit cost. I'm going to pay for it. You don't need an EPA. And the other thing, the other thing they're saying that they've got some monitoring stuff. We had something in place where we're going to have 24/7 coverage on the ship, no waiting for a report to come in from Exxon. That's what you do in the international community. You have your staff 24/7 to see exactly what's going on, so you can get real-time data and accurate data. That's what we had. We worked with the World Bank. We had to develop a 36-man unit to go there with high professional, highly skilled folks, even better than what Exxon had, with 10 years petroleum engineering background and experience. They dumped that plan. We also had a training program to develop additional skills, capacity within the EPA, where we sponsor employees to go develop it at university, and then they come back and they work for the agency in terms of providing their services in return. They scrapped that and said that the EPA, I wanted to turn the EPA into a university. So that's the small-mindedness. That's what developed countries do. That's what they do in the United States, for example, investing in employees. They need to explain to, and that's the reason why there's an exodus right now of all of EPA employees. All of the top level staff and engineers and technical people, they're leaving. Could you believe now? If an employee gets a scholarship, by the way, to go and study, they've got to take their own time and leave to go on that study. That's the ridiculous type of nonsense. So when you hear they're building capacity, it's not true. And there's a lots of discontent at the EPA, and that is why people are leaving. But when people are leaving, the people that they're hiring have no experience, no connection whatsoever to the EPA, and that's why the EPA is where it's at today with all of the issues. And they're definitely not serving the public well. And then they're setting up folks, the staff, to come out with diatribes such as this kind of nonsense to convince people somehow that they're doing a good job and they've made the regulations more rigorous. It is far less rigorous. Like I said, they've emasculated the LISA 2 permit and the PIARO permit. Thanks.
Thank you, Vince, for a really comprehensive update on all the issues that are facing our oil and gas industry. And of course, your urge to the media to ask the right questions and investigate. I just wanted to make sure we had time to take some questions. So members of the media, please identify who you'd like to pose your questions to. And of course, as is customary, identify yourself and the media house that you represent. And Sharad, in case I don't see any hands up, please give me a shout. Okay, do we have any questions? All right, I think I see Divina. So let's go with Divina, and after we go straight to Adam. Divina, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to ask my questions. It's unrelated to what was raised here today. I wanted to ask the AFC, especially the MPs present, what are your thoughts on the new draft PSA that has been released by government?
I'm not an MP, but I'll take it.
Please go ahead.
Yes. I've always said, and I believe the other members. I know. Sorry that MP Patterson is not here, but I've always said that it's the biggest distraction there is. It's a distraction from the issue at hand, which is renegotiating the Exxon permit, which is the Stabroek block. It's a protection of Exxon and the Stabroek block. And they've done a good job again, because look what we were talking about. It's shifting now from the Exxon block, which is the Stabroek block, to these new blocks. Mm-hmm. It's a big distraction. What should have been done is to treat all equally. You cannot give Exxon the hog, because that's what's happened. They've got 11 billion barrels a day already sealed up. Who knows how many barrels are left into those reservoirs? So they're big, fat, and happy already. They probably wouldn't participate in any of those. Let's wait and see. But the newcomers now have to take more money out of their pocket, more resources, and it's even going to discourage even local investors who want to get in, because a lot of them may not even be able to afford it. So that's what it is. It's a big distraction to move from the issue at hand, which is why are you protecting Exxon, even though you said before that they were stealing our patrimony, and as soon as you get into office, you will renegotiate the contract. Why is this big shift? That's what it's about. It's a distraction.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. I don't know if Ricky has anything to add. I don't actually have anything to add.
Ms. Hughes, if I may, can I please follow up?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Adams, given your belief that this is just a distraction for renegotiating this Exxon contract, will you be advising, or will you be pushing for the MPs to weigh in on this comments period that is presently open, for them to perhaps write the government and let them know that this is an opportunity to use this new PSA to subject Exxon to these terms as well?
Oh yeah, I can't remember if David has done that. But absolutely, I think that's necessary. Mm-hmm. And I thought I might be wrong here. I thought even the opposition leader was made some statement to that effect. But you're absolutely right, Divina. That's what it should be. Everybody should be treated equally. Everybody should be treated equally. Exxon should not get preference over anybody, especially new investors. We should shift whatever we call. If we're now thinking that this is the best thing, this is the best deal, this new whatever it is, it's this new arrangement, then why wouldn't it be the best deal for the government with the Stabroek block that has most of the oil anyway? I think it's very fair. So I think it's an excellent point you've raised, and I'll discuss with David, since he's the shadow, he's the shadow minister on our side. I'll discuss with him, but I'm pretty sure that I'm sure he's on that page too. Yes, I will advise as such.
I can just say.
Sorry, Kathy, you went out.
Sorry. Divina, I just want to say that on behalf of the AFC, we, of course, are very, very committed to ensuring that Guyanese get the most out of our natural resource. You know that during the budget, we harped on that. We spoke about it. We pleaded that some of our recommendations would be included in the final draft, and we continue. You know that quite a few months ago, nearly a year ago, our leader, Comrade Ramjatan, publicly stated the need for the contract to be looked at. We've explained the considerations at that time that kind of explained at least some of the decisions taken before we got started with the contract. So we offer a commitment. The challenge I think that we have as a country is that there really is no mechanism in place. Traditionally, this government is not interested in listening or incorporating any knowledge, any recommendations, any additional expertise. And therefore, we can continue to talk. Whether something fundamental comes from it is a totally different story, which is most unfortunate. But we will continue to plug at it. I think Adam had a question.
Let me add to that.
Sure.
It's on record that MP Patterson said 2 years ago, I think, when there was the change in government, that the AFC will stand with the government to come up with the best deal in renegotiating a contract or looking at changes in the contract. He did say that, I think he said that more than once in Parliament, that we are ready to support the government. So we're not going against the government. We're ready to support them in whatever is fair and equitable for the people of Guyana.
And maybe I can remind the media, especially Divina, as she raised the question, that under the coalition administration, we were very strong on ensuring that Exxon would have a direct opportunity to meet with the then opposition, which was the PPP, and discuss issues related to the development and operation of our oil and gas industry. We did that because we felt that although we were in government, we should not be the only person. And if you're talking about transparency and accountability, then certainly you would think that the opposition and the government should have equal access to this huge multinational corporation that's developing our resource. Had that been in place, we in the opposition would have been directly able to speak with Exxon on our concerns. As you know, once this PPP government came into place, I'm assuming they instructed Exxon not to engage with us. And therefore, we get the information on this important national entity, this national industry, from the media, from the press, hearsay sometimes, like anybody else, which is totally unacceptable. Adam, let's go to you, please.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Excellent answer. Ms. Hughes, I want to talk to you about this electronic ID card. Is it going to be fashioned from an entirely new registration process? How would the information be compiled for this card? Would there be photographs attached? So should there be some form of house-to-house registration to attach people? Or are they going to ask me to send in a photograph so they can put it on? I don't know. Do you have any idea how this new idea is going to come about?
Adam, I wish as a key stakeholder, I would be able to offer some information. You notice that I prepared a very comprehensive statement. And I just want to reiterate that other than the information, the piecemeal information that's in the public domain, we have not been privy to a program, a project document, a roadmap for implementation, absolutely nothing. And so the questions that you ask, I think, would need to be asked to the Prime Minister or the President or any of the ministers speaking on this issue, or the Attorney General. Had we had a program of public information, these questions would have been offered to citizens, to the media, to members of Parliament. In normal circumstances, a presentation would have been made. to the parliament. There would be public information campaign, messages on the media, social media, television, radio, in the newspaper. All these things, none of that has been there. And therefore, you are really asking people to be supportive of a program that we know absolutely nothing about. And what is of critical concern in a world where so much personal data and privacy is of utmost importance to most citizens, we have been given no reassurances. We've not heard how we're going to protect our most private data. And therefore, that is what is totally unacceptable about this. Usually, as you may know, I actually, when we were in government, went to Estonia and looked at several e-governance models. And we'd actually contracted as the government of Estonia that has the best reputation in implementing e-governance across a government platform. We actually engaged them to prepare a roadmap for Guyana. And I mentioned some of the things that should be in that roadmap. But in the roadmap itself, as the government strategy should have, there should have been provision to build trust and support for this initiative. And it should explain how it integrates with what we currently have. In Estonia, for example, there's one card. And on that card, the health people have access to the health information of an individual. And of course, it's very strictly protected. Education data can also be accessed by the right professionals with the right permissions to access that data. Your birth, your death records, all of those things are carefully there. I've heard them mention that it's not going to be integrated with GCOM. I don't know if that is so. They should have been more precise on that, because really, are we then going to have still our passports, still our ID cards for voting, still our national insurance scheme card, still some of the other, our bank card, still a separate TIN number? Usually for efficiency purposes, there is a very carefully articulated approach and strategy and policy. And it usually moves over time to a safe and secure one card. So I can't answer those questions, unfortunately.
Kathy, if I may, it's kind of strange also that they are running to create an electronic ID card. Technological advancement, we are not there yet. Many institutions don't have that technology to read that card. And, if you recall, we were pushing for what we call the biometrics for GCOM. And, and the IRI was the one who was spearheaded. We had this development in terms of electoral reform. And biometric was one of the things that we brought on the table there. And to mind you that these people saying that, we should not go into the technology yet, but here you're talking about electronic ID card, which costs about $24 million US. I think that was the contract they signed. Despite that, the AG said that he will do some new laws. The biometrics, when the guys from Jamaica did a presentation, cost about $2 million US. It took 2 years to set up. Right? I'm trying to compare the two where they're running from. $2 million US approximately. Maybe you just jump over, and it will take about 2 years to establish the biometric system in Guyana. But here you're going now with an ID card that probably they're not going to have the multi-purpose that we expect it to be at $34 million US. I just want to highlight that there.
Thank you. I see Divina's hands up.
I think there's two questions, Kathy, and
sorry, can you go ahead? I'm not seeing my
it's on the chat. Let me read it. Let me read it if you've not seen it. It's on the
Sure,
chat.
please.
Question off topic. This is Javon Vickery from Guyana Standard. What is the AFC reaction to the public condemnations about the two WPA members' racially utterance and the support shown by opposition leader about the statement?
Okay, let me answer, and I actually now see the question. Let me answer that question. I want to say that the AFC received a call from the Chronicle a day or two ago asking for a comment on this issue. And I want to take it from a totally different angle. I want to start off by saying that never before have we been asked to comment on any of the racial slurs, the racial pontification that has taken place on social media by individuals such as Babita. I think everybody would have seen that, where persons of my ethnicity have been called black dog, monkey, all kinds of other derogatory statements. Never were we asked to comment on the infamous dildo comment, which was thrown at women in the most derogatory way in the parliament. And therefore, I find it strange and in a kind of a way unacceptable that we are all being pulled into this useless approach of picking and choosing who makes a particular statement and who we're going to comment on and who we will just let slide. I have not heard with our current cybersecurity legislation, I have not seen the range of regular persons on social media that make these comments coming to our courts, being charged for under the Racial Hostility Act, being charged for incitement or anything. And therefore, we can't help but feel that this is a very subjective approach to a very important issue. The other thing is that we are being asked to comment when in fact the current structure is not interested in anything that the AFC has to say, really. And when I say the current structure, I'm not talking about the media, but definitely the government that has the wherewithal to implement programs to change the challenges that we have now. So the government does not allow the citizens of this country to hear our comments in Parliament. And I want to say that when we were in government, we were very strong. I was very strong as a media person to say that the nightly news should include the opposition comments on issues of national importance and the government of the day. It wasn't a case like happened prior to our administration where someone at NCN got fired for playing Kathy Hughes's budget speech. So we made an attempt to engage and hear information and comments from everyone. And the PPP has reverted to the fact where there's a total blockout on comments, views, and thoughts on a range of different issues and comments and positions from the opposition and some stakeholders. So the question is, why should we play this nonsensical, irresponsible, stupid game where we only respond to certain people at certain times? And so my fundamental answer to your question is all that I have said. And I want to reiterate that when we're ready as a country, and when this government is ready to have a serious discussion on race, and the high perceptions a large section of the population has that there exists racial inequalities in the day-to-day dispensation and life in Guyana, when the government is ready to have a structured, serious discussion on all these issues, I personally and the AFC will be more than happy to participate in any serious discussion. That would be my answer.
And that's the best answer I've heard anywhere all the time. Thank you, Kathy.
You're most welcome. Divina, I think, sorry, is there another question? Oh, Javon, you have a question about the high rate and increase of road fatalities. That is a very simple, there's a simple solution to that. I want to remind the media that the AFC and the APNU in the coalition government took a loan for a smart city project. We established more than 200 cameras. There is a huge center in at the back of the Arthur Chung Convention Center, which has a band of monitors that monitors all the key roads in this country. I'm saying all of this to say that the digital technology to monitor which minibus is breaking the law on any corner at any time of the day or night is there if it is being used in the way it is intended to be used. All of that is recorded. You will recall when we launched that program, members of the media were invited to see the command center. What I'm saying is that the fact that we haven't taken control of the lawlessness on our roads is purely at the feet of the police service and, of course, the ministry with responsibility for public security, because they're not putting enough checks and balances on the roads. They don't have a program of effective enforcement. And if it means that more the traffic ranks need to be increased, that every single corner where somebody comes out of the line and goes boring on the other side of the oncoming traffic and creates an accident, we should be able, the police service should be able to go straight, find those people, and ensure that they go through the courts.
Kathy,
it's lawless, it's a free-for-all, and nothing is being done effectively.
If I may, Mrs. Hughes, I'm sorry. I think if you can hear me, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly, Javon.
Yeah. So, are you saying that the current technology that we have to pick up these instances of reckless behavior, it's being underutilized, or do you think that it's a twofold where the police is not doing its job, and also that we're not using the technology that we have to pick up these things?
It's both. It's both. You have recordings of what is taking place every minute of the day. You know that the East Bank in the afternoons in rush hour traffic is a classic example of where a lot of the breaking of the laws take place. There's some key locations in the Georgetown area too. You could monitor that footage at any time on any of these key intersections and look at what transpires and identify down to a license plate who are the offending persons. So that's one approach. The second approach is that you've got to have more officers, police officers on the road. You will see them every now and again doing a speed trap. But you don't see them stopping a person that's going to go overtake on the wrong side of the road. And that causes an accident. You don't see them looking at their driver license program to ensure that more people are not buying their license, which you and I know takes place. Have they sent anybody undercover to buy a license? They got people in the society that could tell us who we need to go to and when. So the fact that most of the population knows and they're not able to put real solutions into this problem. But I also want to add that Guyanese themselves need to be more disciplined. And something is wrong when you will drive a bus and put at risk the lives of close to 14 people in that bus. Something is wrong with us as a people. Sorry, Ricky?
Yeah, no, I'm happy that you mentioned that the program. I mean, if you recalled when we were doing that 2 a.m. curfew, how much cost we got. I was at the ministry there. We got some serious costing that we're going to restrict people from hiring and drinking and all these things. And that program, that policy is bringing a lot of traffic, drink and driving. We got cost out for that. We had the facial recognition camera. We had cost out for that. Oh, we want to know who's privacy and all these things that people come up with. Today, have you seen the record? Have you compared then to now the records of road fatality? And to the latter part of the question, you do not blame your traffic cops them for an incompetent job that you're not doing. That is totally bad. You as the head of the organization has to take the steps that Kathy just mentioned that is important for co-op these numbers to ensure that it's coming to a minimum.
And I know, sorry, Ricky, go ahead.
Yeah, so these are things, policy where we put in place that citizens don't understand that what we were trying to do as a government. We had a program into the number plate would have been one that is being, you could scan it. Yeah, we had a windscreen that you could put a perforated thing on the windscreen. That even though that you try for dig it out, it will explode and destroy itself. These are all these programs are right there in the ministry. And Kathy rightfully says, the minister has to know exactly what policy he wants to put as priorities.
That's a good point, Ricky. And I know we're running out of time, so I'll be very quick. But I certainly want to say that, for example, there are procedures that are in force in many parts of the US. I actually had the opportunity to look at the Adams Morgan area in Washington, D.C., which is an area full of restaurants and people drinking. And what they do there is that the police, every Saturday night, Friday night and Saturday night, they are outside of the key spots where they know people are drinking and driving. And they automatically, as you come out, they breathalyze you. And those are the kinds of things we need to put in place because it changes behavior. When you're in a club now, the person that is going to drive will ensure that they're not drinking. And that's how you start to you put practical solutions to the problem. I know Divina has a question. Divina, quickly, please go ahead. And we'll take maybe one or two other questions after. Divina, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to know the AFC's thoughts on the auction of the oil blocks and generally the expansion of the petroleum sector when Guyana has been struggling to keep up in terms of monitoring, auditing, and regulating the sector.
I really do not want to answer that question just because our expert who has been working on it, of course, is Dr. Vince Adams and David Patterson. Vince, I don't know, is that something that you can quickly look at?
I could, but I'm not sure. exactly what the question is. Is it the capacity? We don't have the capacity to provide
Yes, I'm
oversight.
asking what are your thoughts on us expanding our sector when we have been lacking, struggling to keep up in terms of auditing, monitoring, and regulating the sector?
Well, we, like I said, the coalition government, we had a plan for expanding capacity. I mentioned some of those with the EPA. I know the Department of Energy under Dr. Bino had a similar plan. The GGMC, I cannot speak for the current government. All I know is that they've disbanded all the plans that we had at the EPA. I mentioned a few, such as our study leave program for the staff, the World Bank program that we had to hire the 36 highly qualified folks, even more qualified than Exxon. So we had a program in place, but all of that now has been disbanded. So I cannot speak for the government, but what I know is that that's what we should have, is that vision that we were proceeding with, and it's not happening now. So hopefully, the only thing I'm hearing here that the government is talking about, for example, the EPA is bringing in India to run the EPA. Maybe that's their plan, to bring in India to run, everything. And I'm not saying that that's a bad idea or not, but that's all I'm hearing right now. So I can't speak for their plan, but right now I do not see it. You're seeing it every day where we're not even auditing, we're not doing any of this type of stuff that are necessary. So that's I can't speak for the government as to what their plan is, but I know that it's not impossible for us to do it.
I think Vince, Dr. Adams, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, because the opposition could raise all these issues, can offer suggestions in the public domain, in the parliament, but unless there's the will to incorporate and change, which lies purely in the hands of the government, we will not be successful. Suraj Narayan, can I go to Suraj? He has a question.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Mrs. Hughes, I want to take you to the EID card issue. There seems to be a lot of I don't knows and a lot of uncertainties surrounding this deal. Can we expect the AFC to probably take this matter at the level of Parliament so that we can have a little bit more of information going forward?
Certainly, Suraj. We are committed to doing that. I have raised at these press conferences my lack of confidence in the current parliamentary process as it is structured. The most recent, I personally, and I know that I can speak for the AFC, we have been perturbed and disappointed at the attempts not to bring discussion to the parliament. The numerous occasions when issues have been brought for discussion, questions for answering, and they have not been allowed. We've had previous speakers going way back, and I'm talking 30, 40 years, that have always felt that Parliament is where any question can be asked and should be responded to. I want to remind you all that just recently, I asked some very important questions on the Gas to Shore project. And I have a letter from the clerk forwarding instructions from the speaker saying that my questions would not be answered because in Stabroek News of February, whatever the date was, it was reported that Mr. Winston Brassington answered those questions. And it is sad that the speaker himself does not realize that what Mr. Brassington or any citizen says in the public domain does not carry any credence as statements that are made in the parliament that are recorded in the Hansard. And that is why anywhere else, even if the question was asked 1,000,000 times, because you want to inform and educate your population, your attitude should have been, we are more than happy to have the minister answer these questions. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm not confident that it will go anywhere. But we will be pushing how this EID issue should be implemented in Guyana for the benefit of all of us. The final question, Javon, I see your hand up.
Could I jump in there for a quick second?
Sure, Sharon, please.
I'm not in a position to put my camera on, so apologies. Kathy, that question that was raised by the journalist Suraj, it also is making the assumption that Parliament is going to convene, and we do not control when Parliament is convened for a sitting. In the same tenor as Mrs. Hughes has mentioned, it is sad that Parliament is not meeting with any regularity. If our journalists have been following, there's a pattern. You meet for budget, you meet somewhere around May, June for a supplemental, and then you meet back in December for another supplemental. Parliament is not meeting with any regularity to really and truly pursue the business of the people. And that is one of the tragedies with the National Assembly. Thanks.
Very well put. We could say that we only meet when the government needs money. Even the committees are not meeting. Okay, Javon, your final question?
Yes, can you hear me?
It's a little, sounds like you're under the water, but try again. Go ahead, Javon. If not, Javon, yes, I'm hearing you now. Go ahead. Javon, you're breaking up. So can I ask you to type your question quickly? And whilst we wait for Javon to type his question quickly, is there any other question? We want to wrap up now. We're well over the 1 hour. All right, no other questions. Javon, are you going to try to ask your question again? What are your thoughts on the progress made with the liberalization of the telecommunication sector? I'm disappointed. I don't see as much progress being made. We heard an announcement the other day of another player in the market, but really having passed the legislation and liberalized, I thought that there would have been a more aggressive campaign to get persons to companies that are providing the requisite technology, programs to encourage them to come on board, to invest in providing digital services in Guyana. We still are very much a two-horse race with the two major companies. Not that I have anything against them, but I just thought that by now we would have been better serving some of our especially hinterland communities, and that we would have and that government would have devised approaches and maybe concessions to encourage private sector companies to go into these underserved areas with internet and of course telecommunication services. We still have many places where you cannot make a phone call. I was in Paramakato yesterday, and internet is 2,500 for a 10-minute section period. And of course, there is no telephone service. So that would be my statement, my response to your question. Okay, members of the media, our presenters today, let me thank you all for joining us at this AFC Weekly Press Conference. We spoke about safety on the roads. I want to ask you all to be safe. Look for the person that's not looking out for you. And be careful, be safe, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much, everyone, including Sharad Duncan, who's dealing with the technical issues, and our presenters again, and you, the media. Take care.